right. Looks like we are about 2 minutes after the hour. So I appreciate everybody for taking the time out of your busy days to get on and join us for our webinar to Introduction to Commercial Grade Dedication. So I also noticed, aside from the large population of domestic U.S. Nuclear workers, we also have a large population of international guests with us today, as well as some DoD and some DOE representatives. So welcome, everybody. I really appreciate taking the time out today. So I'm Matt Schustrick, VP of Sales here at Paragon. Joining me today is Tracy Bolt, our Chief Nuclear Officer. So Tracy's been with Paragon for over 23 years, and he's the head of our quality department. So thanks, Tracy, for joining us this morning. Also, I've got Howard LeCompte. So Howard's been with Paragon for just over 2 years, but he's been in the industry for over 40 on the utility side, and he's been very close to the commercial grade dedication process from the beginning. So thanks, guys, for joining us this morning. Just some quick housekeeping notes. We've got everybody on mute for the duration of the webinar. So just use the Q&A button or the live chat to submit any questions. So there'll be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and we'll be able to address any questions that may come up during the webinar. It'll also be recorded. So after the webinar is concluded, everybody should be sent a link to the recording, and it'll also be posted on our YouTube channel under Paragon Energy Solutions in YouTube. Just to go over the agenda for today's meeting, we'll start with a brief overview of who Paragon is for those who might not be as familiar with Paragon. We'll review the history of commercial grade dedication, where it came from, how it's performed, basic dedication, the basics of dedication, and challenges that may occur. Also, we'll review some benefits of single item and generic item dedication, and go over Paragon's approach to dedication. And we'll wrap up with some cost effectiveness of generic and bulk dedication. So I'll start here by just introducing who Paragon is for those who may not be as familiar with us. So we're the largest non-OEM nuclear focused business in the US. As you can see on the right there, our areas of expertise include commercial grade dedication, which we're going to be talking about today in particular, mechanical and electrical reverse engineering and custom design, equipment qualification, I&C repair, and alternate sourcing. So we've got over 170 employees. Most of them are located here in our Fort Worth, Texas facility. Paragon was created out of ATC Nuclear in 2017, and we later acquired Nuclear Logistics earlier this year in February. We are audited by NIAC, NUPIC, the DoD, and DOE, and we hold an ASME Section 3 program with our N, NPT, NS, and NR stamps. So now I'll turn it over to Howard, so you can cover kind of the definitions of dedication and the history and how it all got started.
So thanks, Matt, and welcome everybody. So let's talk a little bit about dedication. So what is dedication? It's an acceptance process that is undertaken to provide critical words, reasonable assurance that a commercial grade item to be used as a basic component will perform its intended safety function. Basically, when we dedicate a commercial component, we're validating that in fact it will perform its intended safety function when installed, and is basically designed and manufactured equivalent to what was done by the original OEM under a 10 CFR 50 Appendix B program. And what is required? An auditable collection of documents, very critical. We talked about reasonable assurance, we talked about safety functions. These documents contain the technical and quality basis for satisfying the commercial grade dedication process and to provide the objective evidence to reasonably ensure that the dedicated component will perform its safety function. You'll hear reasonable assurance and safety function throughout the webcast. So why do we need it? Parts availability. We know that most plants were manufactured in the 70s and 80s or constructed. Some of the original OEMs are no longer in the game. Some of the OEMs, some of the components are no longer manufactured under the original QA program. So the industry needs a way to take a commercial product and dedicate it so it can perform as a basic component in a safety-related system. Potentials and lead time reductions. A lot of OEMs have long lead times for components or items. This gives us another opportunity to use a third-party supplier such as Paragon to procure the item from a commercial supplier and dedicate it so it can perform its intended safety function when installed. Potential for lowering cost. We remember a few years ago, delivering the nuclear promise was a major theme through all the CNOs and the executives in the industry. And out of that program came the Material Cost Reduction Efficiency Bulletin 16-30 that identified commercial grade dedication as a process that provided lower cost for components. So this is just a little bit of an evolution of a commercial grade dedication. Now, if I was to look over, the full range of guidelines that were implemented in the industry from 1978 to 2017, there would probably be about 35 entries on this line. I'm just going to talk about a couple of them briefly. Of course, in 1978, the NRC issued 10 CFR 21 that introduced commercial grade dedication to the industry. A decade later, EPRI came out with their initial guideline, NP 5652, that gave us some guidance on how to dedicate components. October of 90, Newmark, or who's NEI, endorsed that document. Shortly thereafter, in 91, EPRI issued a supplement to NP 5652, Technical Report 102-260, and that ultimately drove, through the course of history, the new EPRI guidelines that we know now in 2014, 300, 200, 2982. And one of the programs that Mark Tannenbaum, the technical executive EPRI, and also his team were the author of 300, 200, 2289, is they had the NRC involved from day one on that document so they could get their approval to use that for the industry. So in 2017, the NRC issued Reg Guide 1.164. So Reg Guide 1.164 was the NRC's endorsement in part of EPRI's guideline that we just talked about. And what does in part mean? So in part means that they reviewed the document, they approved it, they endorsed it, but there were a couple exceptions that they took. So the first exception was NP 7484 and Technical Report 105-849. And those two documents had to do with seismic qualification. Also, there was 4 additional guidances in EPRI 102-5283, 107-33-9, EPRI 101-1710, and then Technical Report 103-291. And those documents dealt with digital components and verification and validation of digital systems. In both of these cases, the NRC had not reviewed and approved those documents, so they have not endorsed those. And what does that mean? It's still important to understand that although the NRC has made some exceptions to the references in the endorsement, they do endorse the overall guidance as it's documented in the new guidelines for performing commercial grade dedication. So what's the basis for dedication? Paragon gets a purchase order from one of our clients, and they want us to supply a component to them under our nuclear QA program under our 10 CFR 50 Appendix B process. But we have to dedicate that component. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to develop our technical evaluation and our dedication plan. And our dedication plan is going to take into concern safety function. Safety function, we're going to look at the end use component. We're going to make sure, in fact, that the parent component, its safety function and modes, is it active or passive, are addressed. From that, we're going to go into the failure modes. We'll do a failure modes and effects evaluation, and we'll look at what failure modes would affect those safety function. Is it going to be fracture, corrosion, short, loss of material? You know, what it is that's going to affect those safety functions from the failure modes, and from that, it's going to drive the critical characteristics. What are we going to put in our dedication plan that is going to help us provide reasonable assurance that that component will perform its intended safety function when installed? And along with that, sample plans. You know, EPRI has developed sample plan technical report 01-7218 revision 1. Of course, if you're using mill standards or any other documented industry plan for samples, that's fine. You just have to justify it in your dedication plan or your technical evaluation on why you're using that. If you look at the sample plan that EPRI's developed, you know, there's two types of sample plans. There's a destructive and a non-destructive. The non-destructive is utilized basically for when you use method 1. So receipt inspection, non-intrusive testing. You know, you have normal, tightened, you know, reduced sample plans that can save you money from using the 100%, which was the basis at one time for commercial grade dedication. And then if you're going to use the destructive sample plan, then you have to look at, you know, do you have traceability, like say heat number or serial numbers? Is it single product, single line manufacturer? You know, there's different numbers that you have to use for the sample size based on what sample plan you use. Once that's in place, you know, the engineer has to look at, can Paragon fully dedicate it under our own program, or do we have to use a sub-supplier? Do we have to use a commercial grade survey or source verification? That's all taken into context throughout the validation. We procure the item from a commercial supplier, and then once we take receipt of that item, the dedication plan and the acceptance criteria will be implemented throughout the process. And then, as we talked earlier, the results of the dedication plan are documented to provide reasonable assurance that the component will perform its intended safety function. So the methods. So method 1, you know, if we're going to do everything in-house, Paragon's going to do, you know, the inspections and the tests in-house, we're going to use method 1. If we have to use a sub-tier supplier, say method 2 on commercial grade surveys, we'll utilize our QA organization that Tracy has, our auditors. We look, you know, at the sub-tier supplier. Do they have a process in place, a program in place? It could be ISO, it could be another standard. Do they have procedures on, you know, receipt inspection, material control, M&TE, material testing, that we can go in and perform a commercial grade survey and validate that if that sub-tier supplier uses their program as documented, it will provide us everything we need for providing reasonable assurance to our suppliers, through our suppliers, you know, to our clients, that thing will be dedicated and perform its intended safety function. You know, along with the survey will come a CSC from them that they've met the intent of the of our purchase order, and they have performed all functions as requested. Maybe it's maybe they don't have a program or procedures in place, but they have the test results or the test equipment that we need. Say a hydrostatic or pneumatic test. We can develop a source verification plan. We can imply or install hold points or witness points in the process. We can utilize inspectors, engineers, QA auditors, go there, perform the function, issue a source verification report, and utilize that testing under our QA program as a source verification, and that will interject in the overall dedication process. And one method that's not as common as the rest, method 4, historical data. That's we have termination logs. We've tested them thousands of times. We have never had a failure. We can take an engineering justification, take all those test results, implement method 4 along with, say, method 1 for special tests and inspections, and help us reduce our sample size. That can be a cost savings for ourselves and our clients. So challenge, communication with end users. We have to understand the end use application and the safety functions in order to determine what the failure modes are, determine what the critical characteristics are. Is there more than one application? I know a lot of engineers, when they do the technical evaluation at the utilities, they include all the applications. So we need to know how many applications are. Is there more than one safety function that we need to take into consideration? Do we need to look at not only normal conditions, but is there any design basis safety functions that we need to take into consideration throughout the dedication process? Receiving customer approvals in a timely manner. If you have requested us to send you our dedication plan, we're going to develop it. We're going to send it to you for approval. What we ask is that as a client, you review that in a timely manner, because that could potentially impact, the overall delivery schedule that you need, especially in an emergent condition or outage condition. So receiving that approval in a timely manner could be critical to the overall success of the dedication. And then communication with the OEM. Tolerances. What are all the tolerances? Acceptance criteria. Were there any changes done that maybe, aren't evident? We need to know as much data as possible so we can develop a dedication plan that is going to meet the overall goals of a safety function of the component when installed in your plant will perform as required and as designed. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tracy, and he's going to talk about Paragon's dedication process as we implement it for our clients. Go ahead, Tracy.
All right, thank you, Howard, and thank you, Matt, for the introduction. So what we're going to talk about now is just a couple of the standard processes that we have when we're putting together a quote and understanding what type of item that we're going to be getting in to dedicate for you. Is it a standard item that you're ordering? Is it a complex item? When we look at a standard item, we're talking about fuses, molded case circuit breakers, ball valves, gaskets, items that are mass produced, or the manufacturer produces these to their standard, a catalog item, and so they have a basic function. So when we look at those types of items, we'll see the RFQ, we'll put together a quote based on that. We'll look to see if we already have a dedication plan that's already applicable to that item. But we'll receive the purchase order. We'll do a full contract review, and then we'll place the order to the commercial supplier because for the standard item. Once we get it in, we'll do a receipt inspection and establish that the traceability to the purchase order. And the engineer at that time will, then perform the technical evaluation and create the commercial grade dedication plan based on that standard item. We'll issue it to the floor. We'll perform the required test, the dedication activities, and utilizing method 1. We'll get all those results reviewed and approved. We'll be able to certify the item as it's been dedicated for safety related use, and then we'll be able to supply it to the client. So standard items are really, one of those items where we can process them really well. We have a lot of dedication plans in our library. We have a long history of dedicating these standard items. When we talk about complex items, we're talking about devices that are, maybe a multi-function device. It might be an assembly of various items, or maybe the item contains software, firmware, or it could have just complicated functions and more additional testing requirements. At that time, when we're doing the initial evaluation for the quote, we're going to be looking at that and determining, are there any critical characteristics that we can see just in the initial evaluation of that we'll need to take credit from the supplier. If it does contain firmware or software, we'll have to look at, do we need to do a verification and validation of the software at the supplier's facility? And in order to do that, we'll also need to do a commercial grade survey. So we'll look at all that in the beginning so that we can make sure that we quote the item correctly for you. Once we'll get the quote out, we should, we'll get the purchase order from the client. Again, we'll do that full contract review, and we'll get the technical evaluation and CGD written up for that complex item. It'll include those specific critical characteristics that would need to be taken credit for at the manufacturer supplier's facility. So once we have those determined, then we would also create that commercial grade survey plan and then get that scheduled so that we could go to the supplier and do that performance-based commercial grade survey. Once the item has been completed by the manufacturer and they provide it with the certificate of conformance, it'll come into our shop, and we'll do the receipt inspection, establish that traceability. We'll perform any remaining critical characteristics verifications in our facility using method 1 or any of the other methods that we need. Again, the review of the test results will be completed and accepted. We'll certify the item, and it'll be supplied to the client, ready to be used for safety related. And when we talk about safety related, it's domestically in the U.S., we understand that that definition of safety related. Within the international and Canada, we have, in DOE elements, we have different definitions. Whether it's safety critical, Q class 1, or class 1E for electrical. So there's many terms that we use for safety related. So one of the good things is that this dedication process that we use, the 300-200-2982 from EPRI, is the most recognized and accepted method of doing the commercial grade dedication. You can go to the next slide, please. So just for a standard item, this is just a simple pictorial of, you have a molded case circuit breaker. It's pretty standard, whether it's a 30 amp or 50 amp or 150 amp, it still has the same basic safety function. So simply, you would do the technical evaluation and CGD for the standard item, do method 1 testing, and then be able to certify it as safety related once everything's been completed. But you can see thank you. For the parent application, the molded case circuit breaker is there with, other standard items. You got a relay, a transformer, a starter. So a lot of these items that we supply and dedicate, they are standard items. And so it makes it really easy to streamline the process for creating these CGDs. Next slide. So here's an example of more of a complex item. So this is a square D master pack circuit breaker. It is a molded case, but it contains digital devices. So there's microcontrollers on the inside. There's a micrologic trip unit it's digital. And so in the process of being able to dedicate this particular item and qualify it, we performed commercial grade surveys at multiple facilities for Square D and Schneider Electric. And then we performed the verification and validation of the firmware for all the critical digital assets. So Again, simply, for the standard items, creating a generic CGD is a very efficient tool to be able to reduce some cost. So again, when we talk about standard items and generic, we're talking about the fuses, circuit breakers, hardware, O-rings, capacitors, diodes, those mass-produced items that have a specific function. And regardless of what the manufacturer is, when they have the standard line of products, the only thing that really changes is the specifics for the amperage, or specific acceptance criteria would change for the critical characteristic, but the actual safety function doesn't change for the item. So the flow is basically the same as what I talked about before, but when we're able to utilize a generic dedication plan, it saves a lot of time by not having to create a dedication plan for each individual part number. Next slide. So again, what would qualify to be generic? Commercially available, a family or series of items that can be used in multiple applications at the plant. So it can be used in multiple areas, but it has the same basic function. It's a fuse or it's a circuit breaker. So, and what are the benefits of a generic plan? When you have a generic plan, you can have consistency with the collection of data, and that'll reduce errors. It reduces or eliminates the need for multiple approvals for a series of items. And I'll show kind of a little pictorial of, just the difference between one plan versus 24. It reduces the plant expense when the plant is required to approve the plan. And cost savings when, spent reviewing multiple documents with the same information. With generic CGDs, the nuclear plants can waive additional reviews for items conforming to the generic CGD, and it saves utility time and money. It also enables bulk dedication. So when you have a generic CGD, it can be used to dedicate standard items in bulk, and it can create cost savings through stocking programs if that's what we need to do to help out. And then it also reduces our cost. When we're able to use a previously accepted dedication plan or one that's generic in nature, it saves us time and money for not having to repeat technical evaluations that have already been done. Next slide. So this is an example. I pulled this page out of a generic CGD that we have for an A200 series starter. And you can see all the different model numbers that this particular plan will cover. And this particular page is only showing the criteria for critical characteristic number 7. But what you're able to do with this is, instead of having an individual dedication plan for each part number, we're able to, just utilize one plan, and it saves all the time in the review and approval process on individual plans. Next slide. So this is just a little pictorial. If we averaged each individual plan of, say it was 6 hours to put together a plan with review and approval and everything, you'd have approximately 144 engineering hours spent. But just one generic plan, you could get it done in approximately 12 engineering hours. So, you've got considerable cost savings when you're able to generate a generic plan. And at this point, I'll turn it over back to Matt Schustrick.
All right. Well, thanks, Tracy. Appreciate that. I mean, that was some really exciting information from both you and Howard. So I really think the real reason, though, everybody showed up was to hear how Paragon could help with their station's commercial grade dedication needs. Simple answer is our experience and expertise in the industry. We've been involved in CGD for more than 30 years. Our engineering team alone consists of almost 40 engineers who specialize in the areas of electrical, mechanical, and instrumentation and control. And on top of that, we've got over 30 lab technicians that support our dedication activities on the floor every day. You know, our library of dedication plans is over 12,000 plans and counting. We're adding more and more every day. And, you know, we continue to review existing dedication plans as they come up to be reused, anything that's been old, to make sure they're revised and aligned with the new EPRI standard. So that's it. If you don't know too, those of you that are on this webinar, Paragon's developed an online database, Peaks, to search for parts and solutions that Paragon offers. So it's an online database that's searchable for parts availability in the industry, as well as Paragon's particular solutions for commercial grade dedication, harsh or mild EQ qualifications, anything that we've reverse engineered or repaired. So it's all in that database. So you simply just pop in your web browser, www.paragones.com, search for your part in the upper right-hand corner. There's an orange search bar. So from there, you type your part number in, hit enter. You'll be driven to the results page where you can review the options available for the particular part you're looking for. Here, I just kind of gave you an example of an HFD 3050 breaker. You can see once you drill into it and select that breaker, all the different options that can be available to your utility. So whether it be, you know, this part at another utility that we can source for you, or there you can see at the bottom, you already know that Paragon has dedicated this item. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel anywhere. And also, you know, we've qualified this particular breaker for a mild environment. So it has some qualification to it as well. So all that information is laid out in the results page once you drill in. So just wanted to go over some key takeaways from today. You know, over the last 40 years, as Howard had showed in the evolution of CGD, it's gone through various variations and updates to how it's performed. You know, based on the component and complexity, there are multiple approaches to commercial grade dedication, some being very common and generic, and others being very specific. So Tracy had covered that the dedication plans can be developed for families of component types, and that leads more into generic dedication plans, and that could be really utilized to show significant cost savings. And finally, the you know, utilizing the current EPRI guidance, it really streamlines the process to make sure all attributes are covered. So, you know, we understand the topic of commercial grade dedication is a really broad topic. So we just wanted to give kind of a 30,000 foot view today, just the history and basics. We know you can go off into various different topics in the area of commercial grade dedication. So we'd be happy to give a site specific webinar or much more detailed presentation for any of your specific interests. So just feel free to reach out to us. Be happy to do that at any time and dig in a little deeper. So with that, we'll move on to the Q&A section. I think Ty, maybe you were monitoring that. It looks to be some good activity there.
Yeah, there certainly is, and that's this is an opportunity for us to respond to some of your questions. You can either ask them in the chat, which a couple of people have, or you can ask them specifically in the question and answer section there at the bottom of your screen. So let me go through a couple of them that we've gotten so far. One of the first questions that came in is, what is there's two parts to it, and I'll try to answer both of them. What is the reason the OEM left the nuclear grade production line prior to the end of the nuclear power plant life cycle? That's the first question. And I think it's a pretty simple answer. There are, some nuclear suppliers that, maybe they started supplying components in the 1950s, 1960s, and they simply, their business plans have changed. Maybe they were bought and sold a few times. We've seen that a lot in the industry, and they've just simply decided to no longer support those components as the plans have changed, as the industry has changed, and we've seen that a lot. So there are a lot of reasons that go into that, why nuclear power or why the OEM providers drop their programs. but we've seen it, and unfortunately, we see it, continuing to happen quite frequently, particularly here in the U.S. The second part of that question is, whatever nationality of the nuclear power plant technology, the standards and regulations to follow to perform dedication is American, which is EPRI, correct? And I think the answer to that question, Tracy, you touched on a little bit, is that the EPRI guidance allows us to qualify all of the commercial grade items for use in a variety of different safety classifications under a variety of different either IEC or Canadian-based QA processes. Is that right, Tracy?
Yes, yeah. The dedication process that was put out by EPRI, it is the most recognized method. It is only, though, just it's one of the methods to be able to dedicate an item. What we're talking about today is commercial grade dedication, but we're not getting into actually manufacturing under our Appendix B program. That's a webinar for another day. But when you talk about dedication to meet the 10 CFR 21 requirement and to meet 10 CFR 50 Appendix B, the commercial grade dedication per the 300, 200, 2982 is just one of it's just one of the most recognized methods.
Yeah.
But the primary thing, for international and Canada, there's different rules, there's different requirements that they have, but they're basically trying to meet the same type of goal. So it is it has been an acceptable process that's been working out really well.
So this is another question, I think, for you, Tracy, and it has to deal with generic CGD plans. So are the utilities reviewing those generic CGD plans to ensure that they are bounding their safety basis?
When it's required in the contract, then absolutely. When a client has a specific requirement in the contract that they want to review and approve or accept the dedication plan, then once we create that plan, we'll submit it to the client for review and acceptance.
Very good.
But it's not a requirement. It's only a requirement when the end user says it's a requirement.
So one of the questions we've got is, do we have data from previous years about how many dedication activities were performed by Paragon using method 1 or a different method, or do we keep track of that? And I think I don't think we have those specific methods called out in our data set, but I would say the majority of the dedications that we're doing are typically method 1, and then methods 2 and 3 are also used commonly. But Tracy, you can speak.
Sure. Thank you, Ty. Yeah, I was looking at that question earlier too, and I know that the specific data, the metrics on that I don't have, but I do know that we have over 250 sub-suppliers that we use, where we have performed a commercial grade survey or a source verification to go along with the dedication activity. So there's been many dedication plans that we've done where we utilize multiple methods. And
how about the use of internal CGDs for reverse engineered items? Or what are we doing there, and how are we controlling that process through reverse engineering? And Howard, you want to step in on that one, or Tracy?
Well, I can add a little bit to that. I mean, I think Tracy hit on it a little bit. Is when we do reverse engineering, we actually use our Appendix B program for a component to accept that. Maybe not so much dedication, but qualifying under our Appendix B program.
Yeah, so I can add a little bit to that. So, when we're designing, or when we're doing a reverse engineer and we're designing a product, we're going to be looking at what the design requirements are. And we're going to confirm that the items that we select will meet those design requirements. So you don't have to dedicate each individual component as they go into the assembly. What you do is you you build the item, and it's controlled under our program. So we would be verifying that those items actually meet their design requirements when we're putting it together, and then doing the factory acceptance testing. And we would be designing that item to ensure that it meets the safety function for its application.
Yeah, thank you. So we have one of the questions, and I'm going to try to kind of summarize it in a way. I think the intent of the question, to try to capture that a little more broadly. So is it only, do you only use commercial grade dedication when you're looking at commercially available items instead of things that are manufactured under an Appendix B program, or does it have other uses outside of just specifically using it for commercial items? I think that's what our question is trying to get at there.
Can you say that again, Ty? I want to make sure.
Yeah, I think so. The exact question is it using CGD to use commercial items instead of items manufactured according to 10 CFR 50 Appendix B?
Okay, well, it's one of those things where if the plant has an option to buy it from an OEM that has an Appendix B program, and come to them as nuclear, right? So I think that's where the question is directed. So is it you're buying it as nuclear from the OEM, or you're buying it from a third party like Paragon, where we would buy it commercial and dedicate it? It's all about I would say your scheduling and the actual item itself. It gets into qualification requirements. It gets in, there's more involved with the decision making. There's times where we might end up having to buy the item directly from the original manufacturer as safety related also. Just because of particular qualification that we're trying to take credit for, or we would have to requalify it to ensure that it meets the plant's requirements. So I don't know if I actually answered that question. I think it just depends on what's the schedule, what's the real need for the component, and how much time do we have to be able to get it to the plant and ensure that we're gonna get the right item that's requested.
That's a good answer. So a question we're getting is, can we support a commercial dedication for a server regarding OBE requirements? And I think the answer to that is yes, Tracy, and we can have Jeff kind of step into that. Let me go find him real quickly.
Sure.
So, but we've done some server dedications, and Jeff, if you want to answer that question, I think you should be able to take yourself off mute now. And just as an introduction, Jeff Stubblefield's one of our engineers in Texas that we asked to help on the Q&A section.
Yes, Ty, if you wouldn't mind, would you be able to repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, can we support a commercial grade dedication for a server regarding OBE requirements?
Server for OBE requirements. Are we talking about operational basis earthquakes?
I think if maybe just talk about the ability to dedicate a server and then qualify it seismically.
Okay, certainly. So a server, as everyone knows, is a very complicated digital device. We do have engineers here at Paragon that are well-versed in digital equipment. And depending on the vendor, if the vendor is willing to support a commercial grade survey at their facility, and or now that we have, the COVID pandemic, willing to support online meetings and surveys, we can help support that. But those being digital in nature do require a little bit added level of dedication effort in the form of method 2 dedication at the vendor. We have
Oh, we just lost Jeff.
He's back. He's back.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. What I was saying is we have several different projects in which we've done the dedication on complex digital devices such as that. One being an Ethernet switch for Canada. And, you know, we've done the master packs. We have master packs installed in numerous different US facilities. So we have a lot of programs in which we've done and have experience with that. So we could absolutely support dedication of the server if that's used for seismic data analysis. I assume that's what it's going to be for. Could be for, you know, an Ethernet switch application as well. So to answer your question, yes, we have a competency here at Paragon to help support that.
Yeah, it's a good, thank you, Jeff, for stepping up there for us. So one of the questions we've got is, you know, why Paragon is, looks like we may not be on a AVL for commercial dedication for utility in Canada. And I think maybe Fayez, you answered your own question there. So yeah, we've been in the process of moving NLI registrations to Paragon's registrations, and we should be sorting all that out. And we'll follow up with you directly just to make sure we've got that correct listing. Another question, and maybe Tracy, this is something that you can speak to, or Howard, is that the receipt inspectors continue to have issues with CFCs that use the wording equal to or better than evaluation versus equal to or same as or equivalent to. Can we speak a little bit about the selection of wording with that and the recommendations that we make?
Sure. I'm making an assumption that those CFCs that your receipt inspectors are seeing, those are not coming from us. It's from other suppliers. One of the things that we do is, you know, ensure that when we're supplying an item that you're ordering, we're supplying you exactly what you're asking for. So it's not an equal to or better than statement that we would be putting on the CFC, because we're actually supplying you exactly what you're asking for. You know, when you get into qualification statements that the item is equivalent to or will function the same as what's previously installed, it can be tricky when people are trying to use wording that it's not consistent. But if I would you know, really encourage if there's issues from the receipt inspectors like you're talking about, I would just encourage you to have them reach out to our quality department so that we could get any of those types of issues resolved. Because we definitely want to make sure that any of the documentation that we're supplying to the utilities is, you know, it's documented and written up exactly the way you need it, and then it's accurate.
And we also are utilizing the Ethanid database, you know, tracking our metrics, our quality metrics,
right,
our OSD&D rates, so that we are in a, you know, continuous improvement kind of mindset, and continuously to improve that. And you should expect that of all your suppliers when they're providing this type of equipment. So that's a good question. And it is, you know, there are some challenges in receipt inspection CSCs that don't specifically address exactly what you're asking them to accomplish there with the purchase order.
Yeah,
so
some of the challenges, I'm sorry, Ty, I was just going to add a little bit to that. Some of the challenges that we've seen at receipt inspection is that the purchase orders contain specific information that you want certified to, but the systems that the receipt inspectors are receiving to has additional information that they're looking for that maybe wasn't included on the actual purchase order that we received. So I've seen issues there where you know, the receipt inspector is looking for certain information and it's not on the CFC just because it wasn't on the purchase order itself.
Correct. So one of the questions we've got is regarding normal delivery times, and specifically for Busman fuses and for Cutler Hammer MCC circuit breakers, multi-case circuit breakers. Tracy, you happen to know those offhand? They're
Delivery.
very dependent on lead time, mostly from
Yeah.
our suppliers, right?
Yeah, and being in quality, you know, my canned statement is I stay away from cost and schedule.
Right. It's convenient.
But no, I really couldn't tell you right now what the normal delivery is for them.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, the production process for us is relatively short for fuses and for multi-case circuit breakers, and typically within 30 days of us receiving those commercially available parts and then being able to turn those around and get them back out.
Yeah, Ty, the Cutler Hammer breakers are typically stock items.
Right.
So those can support an expedited schedule.
Yep. So I would expect, you know, when you're looking for those normal delivery times, you know, somewhere in the 4 to 6 weeks, if it's available, you know, to us commercially immediately, which are, you know, stocked items, typically fuses and multi-case circuit breakers is reasonable. It may extend further than that, and we do all that diligence up front. So before we've quoted something to you, we've asked our manufacturers to tell us how long it's going to take for them to get us the parts, to give you an accurate lead time from the start. So that's always something we can support out of inside sales from Paragon. And there's a question about our counterfeit and suspect items. Can we discuss a little bit about our counterfeit and suspect items program, Tracy and Howard?
Sure. Yeah, I can add to that. When one of the main, I would say, defenses that we utilize for counterfeit, fraudulent, suspect is when we purchase items and we have to use a distributor, we're only going to those authorized distributors. And in addition to that, we have requirements in our POs that we want those items drop shipped directly from the manufacturer. So it's either drop shipped directly from the manufacturer or it's coming from an authorized distributor when it's those critical items. And then we do receipt inspection on every item, every shipment that comes in. And we have those questions that we look at for CFSI. We ensure that what we're getting is exactly what we ordered, and if there's anything that is suspect, we're not accepting it.
Thank you. So we still got time for other questions. If you've got anything that's on your mind that you want to ask about, you can either ask us in the chat or in the Q&A section. We always welcome that.
And I was trying to look to see if I'd missed anything. I was trying to catch any of these other questions that was in the chat.
No, I think we've answered all the ones that I've seen that have come through.
I think so.
Oh, I think there's a question we didn't touch on. So how are we ensuring that the supplied lot to us is homogeneous? So how are we making sure, if let's say a sampling plan is being utilized, how do we make sure that the supplied lot is homogeneous?
Well, when you're talking about your lots and your commercial equipment, if it's required, based on, say, the cost of the item, and we can only, we're only going to buy one for a destructive sample, we'll have to ensure that, the manufacturer's program has lot control. So we may go and just do a commercial grade survey of that facility to ensure that they have lot control, so that when the item does come in, we have certification that the lot is homogeneous. But not all items have to be all of the same date code or all of the same manufacturer batch. And that's why you have your sampling plans that you do. You can base it off of, the purchase order. You're getting it all from the same manufacturer on the same PO and line item, and you can establish your lot sizes and your sampling based on that. And that's where we justify and evaluate how we're doing our sampling. And we may do, as part of the method 1 testing, we'll do 100% on some of the critical characteristics. And so whether it's a homogeneous lot or not, it doesn't really matter, because we're doing 100% testing to validate that they're all basically the same and they all meet the acceptance criteria.
Oh, great. Thanks, Tracy. That's really good information. So it looks like we don't have any other questions. We've come just about to the end of the hour here. So we appreciate everybody's participation. We thank you for spending your time with us. And if any other questions come back, we're going to send some follow-up emails to this webinar. We'll share with everyone the YouTube video so that you can share it with your colleagues. But if anything else comes up and you've got some questions about it, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can go to our website, use that contact field. You can email Matt or anyone else that's your normal contact with Paragon. And we look forward to hearing from you guys, and also for scheduling another webinar in the future with some other technical training, because everybody seems to get a lot out of it. So we appreciate that. And we look forward to hearing from you guys soon. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks,
Yeah,
Matt.
Thank you for taking your time today.
All right.
Thank you. Thank y'all, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Goodbye.